As I overhear the conversation, I glance over at my daughter-in-law, Cheryl, who seems completely stunned. Cheryl looks panicked, clutching an apple, her eyes darting between my husband and son as they continue their discussion. I can feel my anger starting to rise. My husband and son wrap up the conversation, making their point clear to Cheryl. When I lock eyes with her, she's trembling, and the apple slips from her hand. Ignoring her distress, I ask firmly, "Could you call them back?" Cheryl, on the verge of tears, dials my husband again. As I listen to the annoyed voices of my husband and son on the other end, I wonder what I should do next. My name is Raina, and I'm 62 years old. I've been managing household chores since I graduated from high school. I met my husband, Oliver, through a family introduction, and we married soon after. We had our son and lived happily. No matter how busy he was, my husband always made time to attend our son Miguel's school events. Miguel was such a sweet child. Even when I was too ill to do housework, he would do his best to help. "How are you feeling? Can you eat some chicken soup?" he'd ask, his little face full of concern. I had to smile when my husband cautiously brought over a pot of soup one evening, having made it himself after putting our son to bed. Seeing me laugh, my husband joined in, albeit awkwardly. Ever since our son got married, he no longer helps with household chores. But he's good to his wife Cheryl, so I suppose it's okay. Still, sometimes when I'm not feeling well, I find myself craving my husband's chicken soup. I'll never forget the taste of that soup. Lately, I haven't been feeling well. It's probably due to my age, but I've had constant discomfort in my stomach and haven't had much of an appetite. Nowadays, since we're living with my son and his wife, Cheryl handles the cooking and dishwashing while I manage the rest of the household chores. I can't complain since I'm relieved from most of the cumbersome tasks, but recently, I've been feeling feverish and usually lie down on the sofa after finishing the laundry. Just then, my husband walked into the living room. Feeling sluggish, I couldn't get up, so I watched him carefully. Ignoring me, he walked past the sofa, went to the kitchen table, and started making coffee. The strong aroma of freshly brewed coffee made me cough involuntarily. Hearing that, my husband clicked his tongue softly and hurried out of the living room once his coffee was ready. It's sad, but lately he's been so cold towards me, like I'm a burden to him. I can't pinpoint when things started going wrong, but somewhere along the line, this is what we've become. Thinking of how caring he used to be made tears well up in my eyes, and I gently wiped them away with my sleeve. Tonight's dinner is meatloaf, but given my poor health, I opted for chicken soup. I'm fully aware of the hassle it takes to prepare a separate meal for one person, but lately, I can't stomach the same food as everyone else. Yet Cheryl, my son's wife, made me chicken soup without a hint of complaint. What a blessing she is to our family. "Mom, chicken soup again?" Cheryl's gone through the trouble to make a nice dinner. "Isn't it rude not to eat it?" Miguel said, his tone slightly accusatory. "Don't say that, Miguel. I'm sure Reina feels bad enough as it is," Cheryl interjected with a chuckle. I smiled weakly and let her comment slide. Though Cheryl can be blunt at times, she's an excellent cook and very considerate. Today's chicken soup was clearly made with my health in mind. She even added a touch of citrus zest to stimulate my dwindling appetite. As everyone else happily chatted and dug into their meatloaf, I sipped my chicken soup. Suddenly, I paused. The soup tasted strange, almost chemical. At first, I thought it was the wax from the citrus zest, but even after avoiding it, the taste persisted. I couldn't help but furrow my brows, catching my husband's attention, who responded with a stern look. Despite feeling guilty towards Cheryl, something was definitely off. I left most of my plate untouched, and Cheryl noticed. With concern in her voice, she asked, "Didn't it taste good?" Feeling cornered, I lied, saying I wasn't feeling well, and let the moment pass. But deep down, I wondered, what did I do wrong? Days passed, and I began to feel a bit better. Since Cheryl and my son had plans to go out, it was my turn to cook. Eager to finally get out of the house, I decided to go shopping, but my body still felt sluggish, likely from being bedridden due to my recent illness. Thinking it was just a lack of exercise, I chose to walk to the nearby supermarket. While waiting for the traffic light to change, a sudden chill ran through my body and my vision went dark. Instinctively, I squatted down, but soon found myself sweating profusely, unable to move. Passers-by glanced at me curiously as they walked by, but I couldn't get up. I clutched my collar tightly, hearing the distant commotion of people and an approaching ambulance siren until I eventually lost consciousness. When I regained it, I found myself staring at a white ceiling. I was in a hospital room. Apparently, I had collapsed on the way to the store and had been brought in by an ambulance. "Oh, Raina, you're awake." I turned toward the voice and saw Cheryl standing by my bed. I tried to respond, but my body wouldn't cooperate. For a moment, I was overwhelmed with gratitude for Cheryl, who showed no signs of annoyance. But as I looked up to thank her, something about Cheryl's face seemed different, something I couldn't pinpoint, but it scared me. Cheryl didn't notice my discomfort. She took an apple from the fruit basket she had probably brought for me. "Raina, you haven't been eating well lately. It's probably malnutrition. Eat this and get better soon," she said, peeling the apple with a fruit knife. Suddenly, a phone rang. I wondered whose it was for a moment, then realized it was Cheryl's. I knew I shouldn't, but I glanced at the screen. My husband's name was displayed. "Cheryl, your phone's ringing," I said. "Oh yes. Can you put it on speaker?" "My hands are full," she replied, hesitating for a second, but then quickly continuing to peel the apple. Doing as she asked, I answered the phone and pressed the speaker button. "How is she?" My husband's voice came through the speaker. "She just woke up. I'm peeling an apple for her right now," Cheryl responded. "You're conscious again. What stamina you have. What's going on? You're awake already?" My husband continued. From the start, the conversation felt off. Not quite what I expected from people who were supposedly worried about me. My husband and son's words made me uneasy. "Didn't expect her to wake up this soon. Did we mess up somehow?" my husband asked. "Hey Cheryl, you've been skimping on the detergent lately, haven't you? Should we add a bit more detergent?" my son chimed in. What on earth are they talking about? I looked over at Cheryl. She was holding the apple, her face pale and trembling. Seeing her expression, it suddenly clicked for me. They've been adding detergent to my meals. Cheryl had been watching my expression change, and finally she dropped the apple she was holding. Meanwhile, the conversation between my husband and son continued unabated. "Even if we fix the detergent ratio, maybe just mixing it into the food isn't enough," my son said. "Yeah, I'd like that insurance money sooner rather than later. Maybe we should mix it into her drinks next time." "It's amazing she hasn't noticed," my husband added. "She won't notice. This is someone who doesn't even realize she's despised." My son laughed heartily. As I ended the call, I clenched the bedsheets, biting my lip. How did things turn so dark? Why must I suffer this way at the hands of my husband, son, and even my daughter-in-law? What did I do to deserve this? There were no answers, no matter how much I thought about it. I shot Cheryl a fierce glare. She was trembling, probably never expecting their plot would be revealed like this. Cheryl began to panic, fidgeting with her hands. Seizing the moment, I quickly pulled my cell phone from my bag, opened the recording app, and said, "Call them again." "What?" "Call my husband again," Cheryl stammered, overwhelmed by the urgency in my voice. "Now," I insisted, and reluctantly, Cheryl dialed the number. After a few rings, the call connected. "What's up, Cheryl? Did she finally kick the bucket?" My husband sneered on the other end. I could hear my son casually talking in the background, adding, "Don't worry, we'll split mom's insurance money evenly. Actually, you'll get a bit more for all your trouble. Yeah, adding detergent to her meals is no small feat. You deserve it." They both laughed heartily before hanging up. I stopped the recording and glared at Cheryl. Realizing she was cornered, she weakly lowered her arms and looked up at the ceiling, accepting her fate. I grabbed Cheryl by the shoulders and pressed her for answers. With nowhere to turn, she finally broke down and confessed everything. She revealed that my husband and son had become addicted to gambling, often going out together, but their constant losses led them into deep debt. Desperate, they concocted a plan to take out a life insurance policy on me without my knowledge, hoping to collect the payout. This sinister plan had been in motion for 2 years. They realized the quickest way to ensure an insurance payout was if I became ill. So they devised a scheme to slowly poison me by mixing detergent into my food. Cheryl explained that around 2 years ago, she suddenly took over meal preparation. At first, I offered to help, but Cheryl strongly refused, insisting on doing it all herself. Now I understood why. If I had been involved in preparing the meals, it would have been difficult to slip detergent into my food without being caught, which would have ruined their entire plan. Cheryl then dropped another bombshell. The masterminds behind this plot were Oliver and Miguel. They had assured her the plan would work. Hearing this, I couldn't just sit there. Pretending I needed to use the bathroom, I quietly slipped out of the hospital. Initially, I thought about going home to confront my husband and son, but that wouldn't be enough to satisfy me. I decided on a different course of action. I immediately sought out a lawyer after leaving the hospital. Fortunately, it didn't take long to find a law office. I quickly went in and explained my situation. At first, the lawyer was skeptical, but after I played the recording from earlier, his expression changed dramatically. He advised me to contact the police, but I told him there was something else I wanted to do first. We proceeded with the necessary paperwork, and with everything in place except for what I needed from my husband, I set out again, this time with my lawyer. Our next destination was the police station. I began by explaining the whole situation. The police were just as skeptical as the lawyer had been, but as soon as I provided the recording and the lawyer's explanations, they swung into action. Shortly after, a female officer accompanied me back to the hospital, while the lawyer headed to my house with the police. Upon returning to the hospital, Cheryl was still there. The police immediately took her into custody. I felt a brief sense of relief without Cheryl around, but I couldn't fully relax, worried that my husband and son might burst into the hospital room at any moment. I went through cycles of lying down and getting up from the bed, unable to find peace. Eventually, a nurse came to check on me. I had to explain everything, but the conversation distracted me a bit. The nurse was shocked by my story and seemed utterly speechless. She remembered the policewoman and Cheryl leaving earlier, and then went back to the nurse's station to process my admission for the day. I can't say how much time had passed, but eventually, a different pair of police officers arrived in my hospital room. Worried that my husband and son had escaped, I anxiously listened to their update, fighting back tears. To my surprise, they informed me that my husband, son, and Cheryl had all been safely arrested. When the police initially entered my home, neither my husband nor my son was present, leading them to suspect they had fled. But in reality, they were just out gambling and were arrested after being questioned by police patrolling the area. I couldn't believe their nerve, gambling while I was being rushed to the hospital. Though they had wished for my health to deteriorate, they should have known I was waking up. Their casual attitude infuriated me, but in the end, their recklessness led to their swift arrest. So I guess there's no use complaining now. Ultimately, my husband, son, and Cheryl were charged with attempted murder. On top of that, my husband was served divorce papers through my lawyer. At first, he opposed the divorce, but after hearing the sum of the damages he owed, he agreed to all my conditions, including transferring the house into my name in exchange for a lower settlement. As for my son and Cheryl, well, with my son in jail, I seized the opportunity to sever all family ties through a legal affidavit. No more financial support, period. Even if he's released, I'll treat him like a complete stranger. As for Cheryl, I informed her parents about everything. Initially, they didn't believe me, but by the time I finished my story, they were visibly shaken and sincerely apologized. Unexpectedly, Cheryl's mother left the room and returned with a thick envelope. Inside was $50,000. I stood there in disbelief as they continued to apologize profusely. It seemed like they intended this as compensation. I tried to decline several times, but they insisted, almost in tears, that I accept it. So, I finally did. Time passed, and I found myself in good spirits again. The spacious house, now devoid of people, allowed me to live my life without compromise. And yes, I could finally eat whatever I liked without worrying. Since that incident, I think I've become a bit of a germaphobe. When doing the dishes, I minimize the use of soap. I still think it's a waste of water, but I make sure to thoroughly rinse off any soap. It's not just for dishes. I extend this habit to showering and laundry too. If I don't, I hesitate to even put things in my mouth or on my body. While my husband, son, and Cheryl are certainly to blame for this change, I think I'll gradually get better because they're no longer in my house. I have the freedom to live as I please. Some may think I'm emotionally scared, but from my perspective, I feel utterly relieved and refreshed. I switched to a new cell phone. The incriminating voice recordings have been turned over to the police, and honestly, just keeping that phone would have felt disgusting. As I think about the freedom my new phone represents, I'm motivated to try things I've never dared before. Maybe I'll get into the trending world of cooking live streams.